She had 7 minutes to reach the exam that would save her life. The pregnant woman trapped in the smoking car had maybe 2 minutes before she bled out. In that moment, Leah Harris made a choice that would cost her everything and awaken a power 5 centuries extinct. This is the story of how a broke nursing student's refusal to walk past suffering on a cold December evening shattered the boundaries between mortal medicine and immortal magic, and marked her as both savior and target in a war she didn't know existed. Philadelphia, December 18, 6:53 p.m. Leah Harris was running like her future depended on it, because it did. White sneakers pounding frozen sidewalk, nursing textbook clutched to her chest, breath fogging the air. 7 blocks to campus. 7 minutes to escape poverty forever. Miss this exam by even 1 second and everything disappears. The scholarship. The degree. 3 years of sleeping 4 hours a night, eating 1 meal a day, wearing the same 5 outfits while classmates complained about their limited wardrobes. This girl with no family and no safety net had sacrificed everything to get here. Worked triple shifts as an EMT trainee while others went to parties. Studied until her vision blurred. Never complained. Never asked for help. Never believed she deserved it. Just 7 minutes from proving she belonged somewhere. Then she saw the SUV wrapped around the concrete barrier, smoke rising, and the woman in the burgundy suit trapped inside, pregnant belly pressed against the steering wheel, blood streaming down her face, hand reaching through the shattered window. Reaching for help that wasn't coming. And this is what shattered Leah's heart. People were filming. A businessman held up his phone, recording, thumb hovering over post. A woman in a Patagonia jacket took a selfie with the wreck in the background. Teenagers live-streamed from across the street. Oh my God, you guys, there's a car crash. Someone's totally dying. This is wild. Nobody stopped. Nobody helped. The pregnant woman's face was ghost pale. Her breathing was rapid, panicked. One hand pressed against her swollen belly, like she was trying to protect the life inside even as her own drained away. Leah's phone buzzed. 6 minutes. For just one moment, she was 16 again, sitting in that hospital waiting room, watching nurses move with terrible efficiency while her mother's heart monitor flatlined. The ambulance that night had taken 38 minutes to arrive. 38 minutes that became forever. The woman's eyes found Leah's through the broken glass. Please, she whispered. Please don't leave me. The baby? Leah looked at her phone. At the exam. At the scholarship that was her only escape from the neighborhood that had swallowed so many kids like her. At everything she'd worked for. Then at the woman dying while the world pressed record. Her hands were shaking when she dropped her textbook and ran to the car. But the instant her fingers touched the woman's neck, searching for a pulse, something changed. The fear fell away like water sliding off glass. Training rose up, clear and cold. Airway compromised, glass in throat. Bleeding from scalp laceration, pressure here. Pulse weak, thready, shock setting in. Abdomen rigid, possible placental abruption, baby in distress. Her textbook lay open in a puddle, pages darkening. She didn't notice. The air around her grew strange. Cold and electric, like the moment before lightning strikes. The streetlights flickered. In the shadows across the street, something moved. Tall. Impossibly still. Watching. She didn't know the woman was Seraphina Thorne, sister to the most powerful vampire king in North America. Didn't know the unborn child under her hands was the first vampire heir conceived in 300 years, a miracle that made her a target for assassination. Didn't know this one choice, this refusal to walk past suffering, would mark her with a gift that shouldn't exist and draw the attention of creatures who ruled in darkness. But first, she had to lose everything. When Leah pressed her palm flat against the woman's swollen belly, trying to assess the baby's position, warmth flooded up her arm. Not normal warmth. Something alive. Golden. She felt the baby's heartbeat not through a stethoscope, but through her skin, through her bones, like the child's life force was speaking directly to hers. Felt it stuttering, weakening, fading. No. The thought was instinct, not conscious. She pressed harder, and the warmth surged brighter, and somehow, impossibly, the baby's heartbeat steadied. The pregnant woman gasped, eyes flying open. They were wrong. Too bright. Almost luminescent in the darkness. "What are you?" she whispered. Leia didn't hear her. Didn't hear the sirens finally approaching, 12 minutes too late to matter. Didn't hear her phone buzzing again and again as the exam started without her. All she heard was the dual rhythm of 2 heartbeats synchronizing under her hands. The ambulance arrived 14 minutes after the crash. By then, the exam doors had locked. Her scholarship had evaporated. Her future had slipped away like smoke. And somewhere in the gathering darkness, the tall figure stepped from the shadows, revealing a face of impossible beauty and ancient fury. King Lucian Thorne stared at the girl who'd just touched his sister, his nephew, his entire bloodline with power that had been extinct for 5 centuries. His eyes burned red in the streetlight. And he smiled, though nothing about it was kind. She has no idea her real life is just beginning. The morning came too bright, too ordinary for the end of a life. Leia sat across from Dean Morrison in an office that smelled like old books and older money. The financial aid coordinator, Ms. Chin, sat beside the dean, expression carefully neutral, the look of someone who delivered bad news so many times it no longer registered as tragedy. "Your scholarship has been terminated, Miss Harris." Dean Morrison's voice was crisp. Administrative. He slid a single sheet of paper across the oak desk. "Effective immediately." The words hit like physical blows. Leia's hands trembled as she picked up the letter. Official university letterhead. Her name was misspelled, Leah Harris. They couldn't even get that right. "But I can explain," she said, hating how small her voice sounded. "There was a car accident. A pregnant woman was trapped. I'm an EMT trainee, I had to stop. I saved her life." "So you've said." Dean Morrison folded his hands. His wedding ring caught the light, platinum, probably worth more than Leia's entire year of rent. "Unfortunately, we have no documentation of this alleged emergency. No police report filed under your name. No witness statements. Just your word against university policy." "I can get documentation. The paramedics saw me there." "The hospital." "The policy is clear, Miss Harris." Miss Chen's voice was softer but no less final. "Students must notify the department prior to a missed examination. Extenuating circumstances require proof submitted within 24 hours. You did neither." "Because I was covered in blood." Leia's voice cracked. "Because I spent 4 hours in the ER making sure she was stable before I even thought about." "That was your choice." Dean Morrison stood, smoothing his tie. "And now you face the consequences of that choice. This meeting is concluded." Leia walked out into hallways that suddenly felt hostile. Students moved past her in clusters, laughing, complaining about final exams and winter break plans. Problems that belong to people with futures. She saw Jenna and Matthew near the vending machines, her study group. Jenna caught her eye, then quickly looked away, whispering something to Matthew. He glanced over, face uncomfortable, and they both turned down a different corridor. The message was clear: don't come near us. Whatever you've got, failure, bad luck, poverty, we don't want to catch it. By noon, 3 people had unfriended her on social media. By 1 p.m., her group chat had gone silent. By 2 p.m., someone had posted in the nursing program Discord, "Heard Leia Harris got kicked out for skipping finals, LOL, imagine throwing away your whole future for a stranger." By 3 p.m., she understood. She was the girl who'd made the wrong choice. And in a program where one mistake could derail everything, no one wanted to be associated with that kind of reckless compassion. The studio apartment was exactly as she'd left it. Cramped. Dim. Smelling faintly of the Korean restaurant downstairs and mildew from the leak the landlord kept forgetting to fix. A twin mattress on the floor, no frame, no box spring. Textbooks stacked like makeshift furniture. Walls so thin she could hear Mrs. Rivera's television through the plaster, some telenovela playing at full volume. Leia sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing yesterday's blood-stained scrubs. She hadn't had the energy to change. Hadn't had the energy to do anything but stare at the eviction notice already slipped under her door. 2 months late on rent. No scholarship check coming to fix the gap. Was I stupid? The question circled her mind like a vulture. Was saving her worth this? She didn't even know the woman's name. Didn't know if she'd survive the surgery, if the baby was okay, if any of it had mattered. Maybe she destroyed her life for nothing. Maybe the woman had died anyway and Leia had just made the world's most expensive meaningless gesture. Her phone buzzed. Text from University Bursar's office. Outstanding balance, $47,329. Payment due within 30 days. Failure to pay will result in collections action and transcript hold. She lay back on the mattress and stared at the water stain on the ceiling, shaped like a country she couldn't name, until her vision blurred. 12 miles away, in a private medical suite that looked more like a luxury hotel than a hospital, Serafina Thorne opened her eyes. The room was all shadow and silk. Heavy velvet curtains blocked the afternoon sun. Medical monitors beeped softly, but the equipment seemed almost decorative. Nothing was actually hooked up to her anymore. The head wound that should have killed her was reduced to a thin pink line across her temple. The bruising on her abdomen, where the steering wheel had crushed against her pregnant belly, had already faded to yellow. The girl. Serafina's voice was rough, barely a whisper. Where's the girl? Beside her bed, a figure stirred. Lucien Thorne rose from the chair like smoke taking form, tall, impossibly elegant, dressed in a black coat that belonged to another century. His face was beautiful the way broken glass is beautiful, sharp, dangerous, arresting. And his eyes burned faint red in the dim light. You're awake. His voice carried the weight of centuries. That's unexpected. Serafina's fingers found his hand. Her skin looked paper-thin against his marble coldness. She saved me, Lucien. That mortal girl. I felt her hands, her eyes, still clouded with residual trauma, searched his face. So warm. So gentle. And the baby, she touched him, and he calmed. His heartbeat steadied. I felt it. Lucien's joy tightened. You shouldn't have survived that crash, Sarah. The damage to your skull, the placental trauma, even with our healing, you should have lost the baby within minutes. He moved to the window, pulling the curtain back just enough to look out at the dying light. A mortal interfered with a death that was already written. She touched you. She touched my bloodline. And she felt nothing. Sensed nothing supernatural. His voice held something between wonder and fury. She shouldn't exist. You have to find her. Serafina struggled to sit up. She saved my life, saved Raphael's life, and she doesn't even know what she disrupted. If the Covenant learns a mortal rewrote fate. I know. Lucien's reflection in the glass looked carved from ice. They'll want her eliminated. Or worse, they'll want to use her. Then protect her. He turned, red eyes blazing. She's mortal, asterisk. Serafina. She doesn't belong in our world. The kindest thing would be to let her forget this ever happened. She won't forget. Serafina's voice was soft but certain. I saw her face, Lucien. She chose me over her entire future. That kind of heart doesn't forget. She paused. And you're already curious. I can tell. Lucien said nothing. But his silence was answer enough. Find her, Serafina whispered, exhaustion pulling her back under. Before someone else does. Night fell over Philadelphia like a shroud. Leia lay in her darkened apartment, tears drying in salt tracks on her face. She'd cried for an hour, ugly, shoulder-shaking sobs that left her hollow. Now she just felt numb. No one will ever help me the way I helped that stranger, she thought. That's not how the world works. You give everything and you get nothing back. She closed her eyes, pulling the threadbare blanket up to her chin. Outside her window, on the rusted fire escape, shadows gathered thicker than they should. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in an instant. Frost formed on the glass in delicate, impossible patterns, fractals that looked almost like wings. And in the darkness, a tall silhouette appeared, standing perfectly still, watching. Lucian Thorne tilted his head, studying the sleeping mortal through the window. Her face was streaked with dried tears. Her hands were still faintly stained with Seraphina's blood. She hadn't even washed them properly. And in the threads of fate that only he could see, the ancient magic that let vampire kings read destinies weave, light pulsed around her like a heartbeat. Golden. Steady. Impossible. Guardian light. He should leave. Walk away. Let the mortal world swallow her back up and forget this ever happened. But he didn't move. And when Leia's breathing finally evened into sleep, the vampire king remained on her fire escape, standing guard over the girl who'd just destroyed his carefully ordered world with a single act of mercy. The next morning, Leia was shoving clothes into a duffel bag when she heard it, the low purr of an engine that didn't belong in her neighborhood. She moved to the window, pulling back the stained curtain. A midnight black Rolls-Royce Phantom sat at the curb like a panther among pigeons. Within seconds, her entire block had noticed. Mrs. Rivera hung out her window. The corner boys abandoned their dice game. Even Mr. Chen from the restaurant came outside, wiping his hands on his apron. Two men emerged from the car, tall, impossibly graceful, wearing dark suits that probably cost more than Leia's yearly tuition. They moved with predatory precision, scanning the building until their eyes locked on her window. One of them pointed directly at her. Leia's blood went cold. Trafficking. Loan sharks. Something worse. She grabbed her phone, backing toward the door, but they were already inside the building. She heard their footsteps on the stairs, too fast, too smooth, wrong somehow. A knock. Polite. Patient. Miss Harris. The voice was cultured, almost gentle. King Lucian requests your presence. King? Leia's hand hovered over the doorknob. I don't know any king. You have the wrong person. You saved Lady Seraphina 2 nights ago. The pregnant woman in the car accident. A pause. The king wants to thank you personally. Leia's heart hammered. She cracked the door open, chains still attached. The man on the other side was maybe 30, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that reflected light strangely. His companion stood behind him, perfectly still, perfectly alert. I don't want thanks. I just want to be left alone. I'm afraid that's not possible. The man's smile was polite but inflexible. Please come with us, Miss Harris. Voluntarily would be preferable. She slammed the door and ran for the fire escape. She made it exactly 3 steps before the first guard appeared in front of her, somehow already outside, blocking her path. His hand caught her wrist with impossible gentleness. We mean you no harm, he said quietly. But you will come with us. The king insists. The Rolls-Royce's interior smelled like leather and something else, something cold and faintly metallic. Leia sat rigid in the back seat, wedged between the 2 guards, watching Philadelphia blur past the tinted windows. They drove for 40 minutes, the city giving way to suburbs, then to countryside she didn't know existed this close to town. Finally, iron gates opened onto grounds that looked like a park, ancient trees, manicured lawns, gardens even in winter. The mansion rose before them like something from another century. Gothic Revival architecture, all stone and stained glass, turrets reaching toward the gray sky. Jesus, Leia whispered. He doesn't visit here, one guard said, and she couldn't tell if he was joking. They led her through halls hung with portraits of people whose eyes seemed to follow her movement. The floors were marble. The ceilings were coffered and gold-leafed. Every surface screamed wealth that measured itself in centuries, not years. Then they opened a door, and she saw him. Lucian Thorne stood with his back to her, silhouetted against floor-to-ceiling windows. Tall, perfectly still, dressed in black that made his pale skin look carved from marble. When he turned, Leia's breath caught. He was beautiful the way storms are beautiful, dangerous, and absolute. Dark hair. Aristocratic features. and eyes that burned deep crimson in the afternoon light. Not contacts. Not a trick of the sun. Red. Miss Harris. His voice was low, controlled, carrying an authority that made her want to either bow or run. Thank you for coming. I didn't have a choice, she said, hating how her voice shook. A slight smile curved his lips. No, you didn't. He moved closer, studying her with an intensity that felt like being X-rayed. You saved my sister's life. And my nephew's. For that, you have my gratitude. He paused. Name your price. Leia blinked. What? What do you want? Money? Property? A position? Name it, and it's yours. Her mind spun. The debt. The eviction notice. The scholarship. But something in his expression, too controlled, too watchful, made her cautious. I want my scholarship back, she said slowly. And the debt erased. Done. He said it like it was nothing. But first, I need to understand what you did. I performed basic first aid. You stabilized a vampire pregnancy that was failing. His eyes never left hers. You touched my bloodline with power that hasn't existed for 500 years. So I'll ask again, Miss Harris, what are you? The word vampire hung in the air like smoke. Leia's laugh was half hysterical. This is insane. Vampires aren't real. This is some kind of. Come with me, Lucien said quietly. He led her through corridors that seemed to stretch forever, finally stopping at a door guarded by two more impossibly beautiful men. Inside, in a bed that looked like something from a fairy tale, lay the woman from the accident. Serafina. She was awake now, propped against silk pillows, one hand resting on her swollen belly. When she saw Leia, her face lit up. You came, she whispered. I wasn't sure you would. Lucien moved to his sister's side. The baby's heartbeat is irregular again. Our physicians can't stabilize it. His gaze burned into Leia. Touch her. Like you did before. Leia's hands trembled as she approached the bed. Serafina took her hand gently, guiding it to her belly. The moment they connected, warmth flooded through Leia's palm. But this time, she saw it, golden light spreading from her fingers like roots, wrapping around the baby's fading life force, feeding it, strengthening it. She felt the tiny heart stutter, then steady, then beat strong and sure. Behind her, someone gasped. When Leia opened her eyes, the light faded. But Serafina was crying softly, smiling, and Lucien stared at her like she'd just performed a miracle. Impossible, one of the physicians breathed. Lucien's voice was barely a whisper. Guardian. What? Leia backed away, staring at her hands. You're descended from an extinct bloodline, Lucien said, and for the first time, something like wonder cracked through his control. Humans who could heal us. Protect us. See our life force and manipulate it. His eyes held hers, burning with intensity. The last guardian died 500 years ago. Except, he gestured at her. Apparently not. Serafina reached for her again. My baby won't survive without you. The pregnancy is too unstable. Our magic isn't enough. Lucien moved closer, and Leia felt the temperature drop. Stay. Protect them. And I'll give you everything you've ever wanted. Leia looked at the pregnant woman who should have died. At the baby whose heartbeat she could still feel echoing in her bones. At the vampire king whose eyes promised both salvation and destruction. What if I say no? Lucien's smile was sharp. Then my nephew dies. My sister dies. And you go back to your crumbling apartment to face eviction and debt collectors. He tilted his head. But you won't say no. Because you've already made your choice. You made it the moment you stopped running toward that exam. And God help her, he was right. They negotiated in Lucien's study, dark wood paneling, leather chairs, walls lined with books that looked older than the country itself. I'll pay you $1 million, Lucien said, signing a check without looking up. Leia pushed it back across the desk. No. His pen stopped. Excuse me. I want employment, not charity. $5,000 a week. Medical consultant salary. With a contract. That's insulting. His eyes flashed red. I'd give you 10 times that. Then it wouldn't be mine. Leia met his gaze, refusing to flinch. I need to earn this, or it doesn't mean anything. Something shifted in his expression, surprise, maybe, or reluctant respect. You're stubborn. I'm poor. There's a difference. She pulled out her cracked phone, opened a notes app. I'll stay in the guest wing temporarily. Check Serafina twice daily. But I'm keeping my EMT job. I need my own income. Absolutely not. You're a target now. Then I walk. She stood. I won't be kept like some pet. Take it or leave it. Lucien stared at her for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he smiled. My sister said you had spine. He pulled out a proper contract. Fine. But you don't leave the grounds without security. Deal. 3 days later, the university's decision came through email. Appeal denied. Dean Morrison's statement was worse. Miss Harris demonstrated a pattern of prioritizing personal interests over academic commitment. This university maintains standards of professionalism that she failed to meet. It went viral within hours. At nursing_T, LMAO, imagine throwing away your whole future for a stranger. At pre_med_life, this is why you don't play hero. Just call 911 and keep it moving. At study.gram, honestly, she deserved it. The rules exist for a reason. Leia deleted social media that afternoon and found Serafina in the sunroom, surrounded by pillows, eating pickles dipped in chocolate. Don't judge me, Serafina said around a mouthful. Vampire pregnancy cravings are weird. Despite everything, Leia laughed. That's disgusting. I know. Serafina patted the seat beside her. I saw the news. I'm sorry. Not your fault. Isn't it? Serafina's smile faded. You saved me, and the world punished you for it. She handed Leia a pickle. For what it's worth, you're the first person in 200 years to treat me like I'm not made of glass. Everyone else, even Lucien, acts like I'll shatter if they breathe wrong. They talked until midnight. Serafina told her about the father, a vampire warrior named Elijah who died protecting her from a Covenant attack 6 months ago. She hadn't known she was pregnant until a month after his death. This baby shouldn't exist, Serafina whispered, hand on her belly. Vampire women haven't conceived in 3 centuries. Lucien thinks it's because of Elijah, something about his bloodline. But the Covenant thinks it's an abomination. Proof we're evolving beyond their control. Her eyes filled. My brother blames himself for Elijah's death. That's why he's so overprotective now. Leia squeezed her hand. We'll keep you both safe. Promise? Promise. The assassination attempt came 2 days later. Leia was checking Serafina's vitals when a servant brought lunch, soup, bread, tea. Normal. Routine. Except when the tray passed within 3 feet of Leia, her vision stuttered. The food's life signature felt wrong, distorted, corrupted, like looking at something through shattered glass. She didn't think. Just moved. The tray hit the floor, soup splashing across marble. The servant's face went blank with shock. Don't. Leia's voice was steady despite her racing heart. Don't touch it. Lucien appeared within seconds, guards flanking him. He knelt by the spilled soup, inhaled once, and his expression went murderous. Moon silver. His voice was glacial. Enough to kill them both. The servant ran. He made it exactly 5 steps before guards tackled him. Leia had never seen Lucien truly angry before. She wished she never had. What he did to the assassin in the basement, she could hear the screaming from 3 floors up. When he returned, blood on his cuffs, his face was carved stone. The Covenant sent him. They want the baby dead before birth. The air in the room grew colder. A shimmering form materialized above them, an old man with white hair and eyes like frozen lakes. Elder Cassius. King Lucien. His voice echoed strangely. How unfortunate. The poison should have worked. His gaze slid to Leia. The Guardian. How unexpected. He smiled, and it was terrible. She dies. The abomination dies. This bloodline ends. Lucien moved in front of Leia and Serafina, power radiating from him like heat from a furnace. She's under my protection now. Come for her, and I'll end your entire bloodline. Every vampire who bears your name will burn. We'll see. Cassius's projection faded like smoke. Serafina was crying silently. Leia's hands shook. I want to leave, Leia whispered. This is insane. I'm nobody. I can't. You're not leaving. Lucien's tone allowed no argument. You're the only thing keeping them alive. And I will not lose my sister. His eyes met hers, burning with intensity and something that looked almost like desperation. You're under my protection now, whether you want it or not. That night, Leia stood at her bedroom window, watching guards patrol the grounds in the darkness. Vampire guards, moving like shadows, protecting her from threats she couldn't fight. She'd traded her small, safe life for this. Danger, impossibility, a world where death wore ancient faces and promised her extinction. And there was no going back. Valerius was ancient, literally. 400 years old, with silver hair and eyes like winter frost. He taught Leia in the estate's library, surrounded by texts written in languages she couldn't read. Close your eyes, he said. Tell me what you sense. Leia obeyed. At first, nothing. Then slowly warmth bloomed in her chest. Golden threads extending outward, mapping the room. She felt Marcus's life force, cold and vast like an ocean. Felt the guards outside, sharp and predatory. Felt Serafina 3 floors above, her heartbeat tangled with the baby's smaller, faster rhythm. Good. Valerius's approval was rare. Now distinguish. Which life forces are healthy? Which are corrupted? Hours of this. Days. Learning to read the subtle differences between poison and medicine, between illness and health, between lies and truth reflected in a person's energy. Physical training came next, taught by guards who moved too fast for her to follow. Leia learned quickly. She couldn't match vampire speed or strength. But she could anticipate. Strategize. Use their momentum against them. You're thinking like prey, one guard criticized after she failed again. I am prey, Leia shot back, wiping blood from her split lip. So teach me how prey survives. Then Lucien started joining her sessions. They trained in the garden at dusk, when the light turned everything gold. He taught her vampire politics, the covenant structure, the faction wars, who wanted Serafina's baby dead and why. Power consolidation, he explained, circling her as she practiced defensive stances. For 3 centuries, the Covenant has controlled vampire society because royal bloodlines couldn't reproduce. My family rules through political maneuvering, not inheritance. His eyes gleamed. But a royal heir changes everything. After training, they'd sit on the garden wall and he'd talk. About 400 years of watching empires rise and fall. About the loneliness of immortality. About losing everyone he'd ever cared about except Serafina. Is that why you're so protective? Leia asked one night. She's all I have left. His voice was barely a whisper. If I lose her, you won't. Leia's hand found his before she could stop herself. I promise. The touch lasted 3 seconds too long before he pulled away. 2 weeks later, Serafina insisted Leia attend a vampire society event, some tedious political dinner with aristocrats Lucien needed to appease. You don't have to go, Lucien said. Yes, she does. Serafina appeared in the doorway, radiant at 7 months pregnant. She's family now. And they need to see that. The event was excruciating. Leia wore her best thrift store dress, cleaned and pressed, but obviously cheap. Every vampire in the room wore couture that cost more than her yearly rent. They stared at her like she was a fascinating zoo exhibit. Is that really the Guardian? Someone whispered, loud enough to carry. She looks so ordinary. I heard she's destitute. Lucien's probably paying her. How tragic. Playing dress-up in borrowed elegance. Leia's face burned. She started toward the exit, but Serafina caught her arm. Listen to me, the vampire princess said. voice sharp enough to cut glass. She turned to face the room, speaking loud and clear. This woman saved my life and my son's life when she had everything to lose. While you stood in your mansions doing nothing, she bled for us. Her eyes blazed. She's worth 10 of you. And if I hear one more word against her, you'll answer to the king. Silence fell like a hammer. Lucien appeared at Leia's other side, his presence a wall of cold authority. My sister is correct. Insult the guardian again, and you insult me. Later, in his study, Lucien tried again. Let me buy you proper clothes. You don't have to. No. Leia crossed her arms. You're not proving anything by suffering, he said, frustrated. I'm proving I don't need your charity to belong. She met his gaze. The second I start accepting handouts, I become your project. Your pet. I need to earn my place, or it doesn't mean anything. He stared at her for a long moment. You're impossible. You're overbearing. Stubborn. Controlling. They were standing too close now. She could see gold flecks in his red eyes. Could feel the cold radiating from his skin. Leia, his voice was rough. The alarm blared before he could finish. They ran to Serafina's wing, where guards were evacuating. Leia's life sight flared the moment she entered the corridor. Something wrong, something corrupt, chemicals arranged in patterns that screamed death. Bomb, she shouted. Everyone out, now. They cleared the wing with 90 seconds to spare. The bomb squad found 3 devices, military-grade explosives that would have leveled half the mansion. Lucien stood in the rubble of what used to be a guest room, his face carved from ice. They were disguised as construction workers. Someone on my staff authorized their entry. His eyes blazed crimson. We have a traitor. That night, Leia couldn't sleep. She found Lucien on the roof, staring at the city lights. I can't protect you both, he said without turning. Not if they're already inside. She sat beside him. You don't have to protect me. I can. I can't lose her, Leia. His voice broke. And I can't lose you. The confession hung between them like smoke, heavy, dangerous, impossible to ignore. You won't, she whispered, knowing even as she said it that keeping that promise might cost everything. I promise. His hand found hers in the darkness. Neither of them pulled away. Leia sat in the hearing room with a manila folder full of evidence she'd spent 3 days compiling. EMT reports. Paramedic testimony. Hospital records proving Serafina's injuries were life-threatening. Photographs of the accident scene. Outside the door, 2 of Lucien's guards waited. She'd fought him on that. I don't need protection at a university hearing, she'd said. The Covenant knows your schedule. His tone had left no room for argument. They stay. Now, facing Dean Morrison and 3 stone-faced professors across the conference table, she wished she'd brought the guards inside. Miss Harris. The dean's voice was cold. You abandoned your academic responsibility for what you claim was an emergency. Yet you provided no documentation within the required time frame. Because I was covered in someone else's blood. Leia slid the EMT report across the table. Here's documentation. Paramedic testimony. Hospital records. The woman I saved nearly died. The university lawyer barely glanced at it. You could have called 911 and continued to your exam. Your choice to personally intervene shows poor judgment. Poor judgment. Leia's voice shook. She was dying. The baby was dying. Everyone else was filming it for social media. That's not our concern. Professor Chen tapped her pen against the table. We're here to discuss your pattern of unreliability. Late fees. Work schedule conflicts. She exchanged a look with the dean. Perhaps you're simply not university material, Miss Harris. The words landed like a slap. You're punishing me for being poor, Leia said quietly. For working 3 jobs to afford textbooks. For choosing to save a life over a test. She stood, shoving the papers back into her folder. If compassion makes me unfit to be a nurse, then I don't want your degree. She was halfway to the door when the screaming started. The sound came from outside, raw, terrified, wrong. Leia's life sight flared instinctively, and she felt it, Multiple life forces failing, bleeding out, dying. She ran. The quad had become a war zone. 3 vampires moved through the crowd like wolves through sheep, too fast, too strong, cutting down students who couldn't understand what was happening. Blood pooled on frozen grass. There. One vampire pointed at Leia. The Guardian. She didn't think. Just dropped to her knees beside the nearest victim, a girl maybe 19, throat torn open, eyes glazing. Leia's hands found the wound, and golden light erupted from her palms. The girl gasped, life force stabilizing. Stay down, Leia commanded, already moving to the next victim. A boy with his chest caved in. Another girl with her arm nearly severed. She worked on instinct, pouring light into failing bodies, stitching life forces back together while chaos erupted around her. Lucien's guards engaged the assassins, brutal, efficient, inhuman. Then Lucien himself appeared, moving like death incarnate, and suddenly the vampires were retreating, dying, burning to ash. But Leia barely noticed. She had 6 students under her hands now, all critical, all dying. Her power spread between them like golden threads, holding them to life by will alone. Through the hearing room window, the committee watched in frozen shock. When the last student stabilized, when the assassins were dead and campus security was flooding the quad, Leia finally looked up. Her hands were glowing. Every phone in the area was pointed at her. "What the hell was that?" someone whispered. Lucien appeared at her side, creating a barrier of cold authority around her. "Get her inside. Now." The committee reconvened in silence. Dean Morrison opened his mouth twice before words came out. "Miss Harris, we didn't know she was a hero?" The voice came from the doorway. Serafina Thorne stood there, 8 months pregnant, radiating otherworldly beauty, flanked by guards. She moved into the room like she owned it, one hand on her belly, the other pointing at the committee. "This woman saved my life," Serafina said, voice carrying absolute authority. "Saved my child's life. Sacrificed her future because she couldn't walk past suffering." Her eyes blazed. "And your institution punished her for it. Your university is judging a hero." Professor Chen found her voice. We didn't realize." "Obviously." Serafina's smile was sharp. "So, let me be clear. Reinstate her scholarship. Apologize. And pray she's more forgiving than I would be." 20 minutes later, Leia walked out with a reinstatement letter, a formal apology, and an offer for honors distinction that she'd refused. "I don't want special treatment," she'd told them. "Just fair treatment. Just what I earned." Outside, Lucien waited by the car. When she approached, his hand found hers, warm from recent violence, steady, certain. "You're not just a guardian, Leia," he said quietly. "You're the rarest thing in any world. Someone who chooses compassion over everything, even survival." She looked up at him, at his red eyes, his ancient face, his impossible beauty, and felt the truth hit her like lightning. She was in love with an immortal king. And judging by the way he was looking at her, the way his hand tightened around hers, the way 400 years of control seemed to crack in his expression, he knew. The invitation arrived on black velvet, gold script announcing the autumn equinox ball on neutral territory. Every vampire faction would attend. Including the Covenant. "Absolutely not," Lucien said flatly. "She's going." Serafina was 8 months pregnant now, radiant and immovable. "They need to see we're not afraid. That Leia stands with us. They'll try to kill her. They'll try anyway." Serafina turned to Leia. "Please. I need you there." So Leia found herself in a midnight blue gown that Serafina had commissioned, modest but elegant, the kind of dress that whispered wealth without screaming it. For once, she didn't argue. This wasn't about pride. This was about survival. Lucien spent 3 days teaching her vampire etiquette. How to bow without submitting. Which titles demanded respect. How to identify threats by posture, by the way ancient vampires held their wine glasses, by the temperature drop that preceded violence. And if someone challenges you directly, he asked, I defer to you immediately. She'd memorized this part. I'm under your protection. Any insult to me is an insult to you. His expression softened slightly. Good. The ball was held at an estate that made Lucien's mansion look modest, Baroque architecture, crystal chandeliers the size of cars, marble floors that reflected hundreds of impossibly beautiful faces. Vampires filled the ballroom in designer gowns and tailored suits, their skin pale, their eyes too bright, their movements too fluid. Leia was the only human present who wasn't serving blood on silver trays. They stared. All of them. The mortal guardian, someone murmured. How quaint. I wonder how long she'll last. A month, perhaps? Humans are so fragile. Lucien's hand found the small of her back, a possessive gesture that sent ripples through the crowd. The royal guardian, he announced, voice carrying authority that silenced whispers. Under my personal protection. Any disrespect shown to her will be answered by me. The evening became a careful dance of politics and barely veiled threats. Elder vampire ladies asked pointed questions about her temporary position, her limited lifespan, her unfortunate humanity. Then Lucien asked her to dance. The waltz was centuries old, the kind of formal movement that required bodies to align perfectly. His hand on her waist was cold through the silk. Her palm against his shoulder felt the marble hardness beneath his suit. You're doing well, he murmured as they turned. I'm terrified. I know. His eyes met hers, red and ancient, and something else. Something warmer. You're still the bravest person I've ever met. The moment stretched between them, heavy with everything they hadn't said. Her heart hammered against her ribs. His thumb traced a small circle on her waist. Then Serafina entered the ballroom, and the music stopped. She was magnificent, 8 months pregnant, wearing emerald green, one hand resting on her belly where the baby moved visibly. The first vampire pregnancy in 3 centuries, on display for all to see. Elder Cassius appeared from the crowd, flanked by 12 Covenant members. He was ancient, maybe 1,000 years old, with white hair and eyes like frozen lakes. Lady Serafina. His voice carried across the silent ballroom. The Covenant requests you submit to examination. This pregnancy poses questions that must be answered. No. Serafina's voice was steady. My child is not your concern. An unnatural birth threatens the balance. Leia's life sight flared without warning. She looked at Cassius, really looked, and saw the truth beneath his skin. His essence was corrupted, rotting from the inside, decaying despite his immortality. Dark magic threaded through his life force like cancer. You're dying, Leia said, loud enough to carry. That's what this is about. You're dying and you're jealous of new life. Cassius's face twisted with rage. How dare! The baby's power terrifies you because it's everything you've lost. Leia stepped forward, her voice ringing clear. You're not protecting vampire society. You're trying to destroy what you can't have. Chaos erupted. Covenant vampires attacked, a coordinated strike meant to kidnap Serafina. Leia's instincts took over. Golden light exploded from her hands, forming a barrier around Serafina that burned any vampire who touched it. Lucien moved like death incarnate, cutting through attackers with brutal efficiency. Guards engaged on all sides. The ballroom became a battlefield, screaming, blood, supernatural speed colliding with ancient magic. Then one Covenant vampire got through. Leia saw him too late, saw the moon's silver dagger in his hand, saw him drive it into Serafina's side. The vampire princess gasped, stumbling. The baby's life force plummeted instantly. No. Leia caught her, pouring power into the wound, but the poison was already spreading. Moon silver, designed to kill vampires beyond healing, to destroy life force at its source. Behind them, Marcus, her trainer, her teacher, opened a shimmering portal. My lord, he called to Cassius. This way. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Lucien's roar shook the building. He moved faster than Leia could track, and suddenly Marcus was Ash, and Cassius was fleeing through the closing portal, and Seraphina was dying in Leia's arms. "Get her to the car," Lucian commanded, his voice fractured. Now, the ride back was a nightmare. Leia held pressure on the wound while Seraphina's skin turned gray, while the baby's heartbeat stuttered and failed and stuttered again. At the estate, vampire doctors swarmed. Examined. Conferred in grim whispers. The lead physician finally turned to Lucian. "The poison is spreading too fast. We have to deliver now or we lose them both." He paused. "But the baby is 8 weeks premature. Even with the Guardian's power, his organs aren't developed enough. He won't survive outside the womb." Lucian's face went blank. "What are you saying?" "You have to choose, my lord. Save Lady Seraphina, or attempt delivery and likely lose them both." Leia stood in the surgical suite, hands still glowing with power, and felt the impossible weight of the choice settle on her shoulders. Save Seraphina and guarantee the baby's death. Or try to save both and likely lose everything. There was no third option. Or so they thought. The surgical suite smelled like antiseptic and fear. Seraphina lay on the table, gray-skinned, poison spreading through her veins like black lightning. The baby's heartbeat was a desperate flutter on the monitor. "We're out of time," the lead physician said. "If we deliver now, we might save Lady Seraphina. But the baby," he shook his head. 8 weeks premature. Underdeveloped lungs, incomplete organ systems. He won't survive more than minutes outside the womb." "And if we wait?" Lucian's voice was hollow. "The poison kills them both within the hour." Silence filled the room like water drowning them all. "Save my sister." Lucian's words came out broken. "The baby, we can try again. Somehow." But Seraphina's eyes fluttered open. Her hand shot out, gripping Leia's wrist with surprising strength. "Save my baby," she whispered. "Promise me. Please." Leia stood paralyzed between them, the king begging her to save his sister, the mother begging her to save her child. Both options were failure. Both options were loss. Lucian pulled her into the corridor, his control finally shattering. "I can't lose her, Leia. Seraphina is all I have left of my family. For 100 years, and she's the only one who," his voice broke. "And I can't lose you either. I know I have no right to say it, but I love you too." The words escaped before she could stop them. "But that can't be why I choose." She ran to the library, tearing through ancient texts Marcus had shown her before his betrayal. There, buried in a manuscript written in Old French, a passage about a guardian named Isolde who'd sustained a vampire infant externally for 3 days while its mother recovered from silver poisoning. The guardian may become the vessel, lending her own life force to sustain the child outside the womb. But the cost is absolute, complete focus for every breath, every heartbeat. Any distraction means death for both. And the guardian becomes vulnerable, a candle burning at both ends. Leia ran back to the surgical suite. "I can do it. I can keep him alive outside the womb while you save Seraphina." The physician looked doubtful. "For how long?" 48 hours. Long enough for his lungs to develop, for his organs to mature enough to survive independently. "Absolutely not." Lucian's voice was steel. "You'll be defenseless. The Covenant will know. They'll attack. Then protect me." Leia met his eyes. "It's not your choice, Lucian. It's mine. And I'm doing this." She didn't wait for permission. Just moved to the surgical table, placed her hands on Seraphina's belly, and closed her eyes. The connection formed instantly, golden threads wrapping around the baby's failing life force, feeding it with her own essence. "I'm ready," she whispered. The C-section took 6 minutes. They lifted the baby out, tiny, gray, not breathing. The physician placed him in Leia's arms, and she poured everything into him. Golden light flooded the room. Her life force flowed into the infant like a river, filling his underdeveloped lungs, strengthening his struggling heart, sustaining every cell that wasn't ready to exist on its own. The baby gasped, cried. His skin flushed pink. "Impossible," someone breathed. But Leia barely heard. She was already sinking into the trance state, her consciousness merging with the baby's, her breathing matching his, her heartbeat adjusting to his faster rhythm. She became the bridge between his fragile existence and survival. Around her, the medical team worked frantically on Serafina, flushing poison, repairing damage, fighting to save the vampire princess while her son breathed in borrowed time. Hours blurred together. Leia sat motionless in a chair beside the incubator, one hand on the baby's chest, golden light pulsing with every breath. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't look away or think about anything except breathe, heartbeat, live, breathe, heartbeat, live. Lucien never left. He positioned guards around the room, then sat beside her, speaking softly even though she couldn't respond. "You're the bravest person I've ever known. The strongest. Hold on, Leia. Please. Just hold on." Hour 12. The baby's lungs began developing faster, pink tissue filling in gaps. Hour 24. Serafina woke briefly, saw her son alive, wept, and slept again. Hour 36. Leia's skin turned translucent, veins visible beneath like a map of fading rivers. Hour 40. The baby's organs were nearly complete. Almost ready. Almost strong enough. Hour 46. Leia's life force flickered like a candle in wind. The baby breathed steadily now, growing stronger with every hour. Serafina was stable, poison finally purged. But Leia was dying, burning herself away to keep the promise she'd made. Lucien held her free hand, his cold touch the only thing anchoring her to consciousness. "Just 2 more hours," he whispered. "You can do this. Stay with me." But in the shadows outside the estate, Elder Cassius stood with 20 Covenant assassins, watching the guards patrol, counting the minutes. "The Guardian is defenseless," he said, smiling. "The king is distracted. The princess is weak." He raised his hand. "Now we strike. Kill them all." Hour 47. Leia's vision blurred at the edges, her life force so dim she could barely maintain the connection. The baby slept peacefully in her arms, his organs nearly complete. Just 1 more hour. The alarm shattered the silence. Lucien was on his feet instantly. "They're here. Full assault." His eyes met hers, anguished, desperate. "I have to go. I have to defend." "Go," she whispered, voice barely audible. "Protect Serafina." He hesitated for 1 heartbeat, then kissed her forehead, cold lips against burning skin, and vanished. The sounds of battle erupted through the estate. Screaming. Explosions. The wet sounds of violence. Leia sat frozen, unable to move, unable to help, consciousness tethered to the babies by golden threads she couldn't release. The guards outside her door fought. Died. She heard their bodies hit the floor. Then the door exploded inward. Elder Cassius stepped through the smoke, white hair pristine, eyes burning with ancient hatred. "Foolish guardian." His smile was terrible. "You've made yourself a perfect target." Leia couldn't speak, couldn't move, could only watch as he approached, moon's silver blade in hand. "The baby dies. You die. And Lucien's bloodline ends today." He raised the dagger. "Any last words?" As the blade descended toward the infant, the baby's eyes opened. They glowed golden, the same light as Leia's power. Power surged backward through their connection, not from her to him, but from him to her. The baby channeled guardian essence back into Leia's failing body, stabilizing her, strengthening her, filling her with light that shouldn't exist. Leia gasped, consciousness slamming back into full awareness. She stood, the baby cradled safely against her chest, and faced Cassius with power blazing from every inch of her skin. "You're dying," she said, voice resonating with authority. "I can see it. The dark magic you used to extend your immortality, it's rotting you from the inside." She unleashed her life sight, and suddenly everyone in the corridor could see it too, Cassius's true form, corruption eating through his essence like cancer, jealousy and fear and dying rage consuming what little remained of his soul. "You're not protecting vampire society," Leia continued. "You're terrified of it. Terrified this baby represents everything you've lost: life, hope, future." Half of Cassius's forces dropped their weapons, backing away in horror. Then Lucien appeared in the doorway, covered in blood, eyes blazing crimson, and when he saw Leia standing strong with his nephew glowing in her arms, something fierce and proud crossed his face. "It ends now," Lucien said quietly. The fight was brutal. Centuries of conflict compressed into minutes of supernatural violence. But Leia stood behind him, channeling guardian power into a protective shield, amplifying his strength, healing his wounds as fast as Cassius could inflict them. When Lucien's blade finally took Cassius's head, the ancient vampire crumbled to ash. Silence fell. Leia looked down at the baby, at his tiny fingers wrapped around hers, at his eyes that had saved her life by sharing the power she'd given him, and felt the connection gently release. His organs were complete. His lungs worked independently. He was ready. "Serafina," she whispered. They found her awake, weak but alive, tears streaming when they placed her son in her arms. "Raphael," Serafina breathed, pressing her lips to his forehead. "After your father." She looked at Leia. "You saved us all." In the hall, the remaining Covenant elders knelt. "The baby is legitimate. The bloodline is secured. We acknowledge King Lucien's reign." Leia smiled. Then her knees buckled, and everything went black. She woke 3 days later in silk sheets, morning light filtering through curtains. Lucien sat in the chair beside her bed, head bowed, hand holding hers even in sleep. She'd saved them all. Now she had to figure out what came next. Leia woke to silk sheets and morning light filtering through curtains she didn't recognize. Lucien's private quarters. She realized it slowly, taking in the dark furniture, the books stacked on nightstands, the subtle scent of him everywhere. He sat in the chair beside her bed, head bowed, hand holding hers even in sleep. He looked exhausted in a way she'd never seen. Vampires didn't need sleep, but stress could bring them close. "Lucien," she whispered. His eyes opened instantly, red and blazing with relief. 3 days. You've been asleep for 3 days. His voice cracked. "I thought when you collapsed." She pulled him down into an embrace, and for a moment they just held each other, two people who'd almost lost everything. The door opened softly. Serafina entered, radiant and healthy, carrying a small bundle. "Someone wants to meet his savior properly." Baby Raphael was perfect, tiny fists, dark hair, and eyes that glowed faint gold when he saw Leia. When Serafina placed him in her arms, Leia felt it, a permanent connection, delicate but unbreakable. She would always sense his well-being, always know if he needed her. "We're calling him Raphael Liam," Serafina said softly. "After his father. And in honor of the woman who gave everything to save him." Leia, she started to correct, but stopped. Liam, close enough. An honor she didn't know how to accept. 2 days later, Dean Morrison arrived personally with a restoration letter, full honors distinction, and a public apology. The media had gone viral with cell phone footage, mystery healer with glowing hands saves students, and speculation about supernatural abilities dominated every news cycle. "You could go back," Lucien said that evening in his study. "Finish your degree. Return to normal life. Or," Leia asked, "or accept the position I'm offering." He slid a contract across the desk. "Royal Guardian. Substantial salary. Estate residence. Protection for life." Serafina appeared in the doorway, Raphael in her arms. "Please stay. He needs you. I need you. You're family now." Leia stared at the contract, old instincts warring with new understanding. "I don't want to be kept. You've earned this 1,000 times over." Lucien's frustration finally broke through. "When will you believe you deserve good things?" The words hit like lightning. He was right. Her refusal wasn't about pride, it was about shame. About believing that accepting help meant admitting she was charity, not worthy. "I'll stay," she said slowly. "But on my terms." They negotiated for hours. Leah would continue nursing school online. She'd open a free clinic in her old neighborhood, funded by the estate, bearing her name. Guardian duties would be employment, not charity. And she'd keep her old apartment, even if she rarely used it, as a reminder of where she came from. "Deal," Lucien said, something like pride in his eyes. The covenant reformed under new leadership. Raphael was declared heir apparent. Peace treaties were signed. And Leah found herself teaching vampire aristocrats about human poverty, creating scholarship funds, building bridges between worlds that had never touched before. 3 weeks after she woke, Lucien found her on the estate's roof, watching the city lights. "I've lived 400 years, he said quietly, standing beside her. "I've never felt this. You're not just my guardian, you're my equal, my partner, my—" "Say it," she whispered. "My heart. If I still have one to give." She turned to face him. "I was afraid. Afraid I was just the poor girl you pitied. Afraid this was temporary. You're the woman who saved my bloodline. Who chose sacrifice over safety. Who taught me that power means nothing without compassion." His hand cupped her face, cold and gentle. "You're not temporary. You're forever, if you'll have me." She answered by pulling him down into a kiss, their first, tender and intense, sealing a bond that had been building since the night she stopped running toward that exam. 6 months later, Leah walked across a stage in cap and gown, nursing degree finally complete. Lucien and Serafina sat in the audience, Raphael on his aunt's lap, clapping his tiny hands. The Harris Guardian Clinic opened the following week, a bright, modern space in her old neighborhood, treating humans and vampires without judgment or charge. On Raphael's first birthday, he took his first steps and accidentally made the birthday candles glow gold. Leah taught him gently how to control it, how guardian power was a gift, not a weapon. Now, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, Leah finished bandaging a kid's scraped knee at the clinic when the familiar purr of an engine made her look up. The midnight black Rolls-Royce pulled up, no longer terrifying, just familiar. Lucien stepped out, leaning against the car, watching her work with quiet pride. She finished her notes, grabbed her jacket, and joined him. "Ready to go home?" he asked. "Home." She smiled, testing the word. "Still sounds strange. But good strange." As they drove back toward the estate, past the neighborhood where she'd once struggled to survive, toward the mansion where she now belonged, Leah thought about the girl who'd stopped when everyone else walked past. "I used to think I was nobody worth saving," she reflected. Turns out, the girl who stopped wasn't nobody. She was exactly who she needed to be. And sometimes the fairy tale isn't about being rescued. Sometimes it's about saving yourself and finding someone who sees your worth when you can't.